The morning sun poured gently into the Music Academy's grand hall, touching every corner with its golden light. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the old air conditioner. Students moved about nervously, carrying sheet music and adjusting their instruments. Among them was a young girl who had arrived very early, her hands slightly trembling, not from fear but from anticipation. She carried with her a small, worn-out bag that contained everything she owned related to her music. A few old sheets of music, a notebook, and a tiny metronome that clicked softly in her pocket. Her clothes were simple and patched in places, but her eyes shone with determination. She found a corner seat and began to rehearse quietly, humming a few notes under her breath. Despite the uneven floorboards and the dim lighting near her spot, she felt at home in the academy. She had always dreamed of this day, a chance to play in front of people who really knew music, and perhaps, for once, to be seen not as a poor girl, but as someone who could create something beautiful. News had spread quickly that a billionaire, famous for his wealth and influence, would be visiting the academy that day. He had a reputation for being sharp-tongued and demanding, with a love for showcasing talent, but only talent he deemed worthy. The students whispered nervously to each other. The billionaire was known to attend performances and then make remarks that could crush even the most confident musician. The girl didn't know much about him, but she had heard enough to understand that this visit would be a test, one that could either lift her into the light or make her feel invisible. She closed her eyes for a moment and breathed deeply, reminding herself that this was her chance to show the world who she really was. The hall began to fill with more students, teachers, and a few academy staff members preparing for the arrival of the billionaire. The air buzzed with whispers, half excitement and half fear. The girl adjusted her seat, feeling her heart beat faster. She was used to being underestimated, but today it felt heavier than usual. Today, someone powerful would judge her abilities almost instantly, before even understanding her story. The doors at the end of the hall opened suddenly, and the billionaire walked in. His presence filled the room with a quiet tension. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, he moved with confidence, a slight smirk on his face that suggested he already believed he knew everything there was to know. Students straightened up in their chairs, and some even froze in place, unsure of how to act in front of someone so commanding. He scanned the room quickly, his eyes landing on the young girl in the corner. She had hoped to remain unnoticed, blending in with the rest of the students. But it was impossible to hide from someone who seemed to take notice of every detail. The billionaire's smirk widened as he approached, and a soft murmur ran through the audience. People exchanged looks, some feeling excitement, others a sense of unease. "You can't play the piano," he said loudly, his voice clear and sharp, almost cutting through the air. The words weren't a question, they were a declaration. His eyes danced with amusement, as if he were already imagining the girl failing and confirming his opinion. A few students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of how she would respond. The girl's fingers paused on the keys of her small keyboard, which she had placed on her lap. Her cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment, but with a quiet fire that began to rise inside her. She had expected doubt from others, but not such blatant disbelief. She looked up at the billionaire, meeting his gaze, and felt a surge of defiance. The world had underestimated her many times before, but this time, she wouldn't let it happen. The billionaire chuckled lightly, clearly enjoying the scene. "Look at you," he said, gesturing at her torn clothes and old bag. "All the books and papers in the world won't make you a real musician. Talent doesn't come with poverty." Some students laughed nervously, unsure whether to support her or stay quiet. Teachers exchanged glances, a mix of concern and hope. The girl, however, stayed still. She wasn't going to respond with words. Words had often failed her. Music had not. Music was her voice, her strength, her proof. She set her bag aside and slowly moved toward a slightly scratched grand piano at the center of the hall. Her shoes clicked softly against the wooden floor, each step deliberate, measured, and calm. The room held its breath. The billionaire leaned back slightly, clearly confident that nothing remarkable would follow his words. He did not know that he had just ignited a fire. As she lifted the cover of the piano, her fingers hovered above the keys. Memories of hours spent practicing on a broken piano at home came rushing back. Her mother's encouragement, the neighbor's lending of a keyboard, the long nights where she played by candlelight because electricity was unreliable. Each memory strengthened her resolve. She didn't need wealth or fancy instruments. She had something far more valuable: passion, practice, and heart. The girl pressed her fingers to the keys gently, testing the weight and sound. A soft note emerged, pure and clear. She closed her eyes and let herself feel the music. Slowly, her hands moved, finding rhythm and melody. At first, it was simple, a quiet tune, almost hesitant. The billionaire leaned forward slightly, curiosity flickering across his face. No one had expected much from her, yet even he seemed intrigued by the delicate precision of her notes. The melody grew bolder, more confident, filling the hall with sound. It was not just a series of notes. It was a story, a reflection of her struggles, her hopes, and her dreams. The audience, initially skeptical, now watched with wide eyes, caught off guard by the skill and emotion she poured into every key. Teachers whispered in amazement, students gasped softly, and the billionaire's smirk began to fade, replaced by a flicker of surprise. Her fingers danced over the keys with a confidence that seemed impossible for someone so young and underprivileged. She lost herself in the music, forgetting the hall, the billionaire, and even the fear that had tried to take hold of her moments ago. Every note told a story of perseverance, every chord a testament to her unwavering determination. The hall was alive with her music, and for the first time, people stopped seeing her as the poor girl. They saw an artist. The billionaire, who had so confidently claimed she couldn't play, sat in stunned silence. His eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but in the process of recalculating everything he thought he knew about talent and poverty. The room, which had been tense and filled with doubt, was now silent except for the music. It wrapped around every listener, touching hearts in ways words never could. When the piece ended, the final note lingered in the air like a soft whisper. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the hall erupted into applause, not just polite clapping, but a wave of genuine admiration. The girl opened her eyes, her chest heaving slightly, but a smile of quiet triumph spread across her face. She had proven, not through argument or confrontation, but through her music, that she was more than capable. The billionaire remained seated, his hands folded in front of him, the smirk gone. He realized that his wealth and confidence could not diminish talent born from dedication and heart. The students looked at her with newfound respect, some in awe, others inspired to push themselves harder. Even the teachers, who had long believed in her potential, felt proud and emotional. For the girl, the moment was more than victory. It was validation. She had faced doubt, ridicule, and the weight of expectation, and had emerged not only unbroken but shining. In that hall, surrounded by people who had underestimated her, she discovered the power of persistence and the truth that passion cannot be measured by wealth or appearance. That day, the Music Academy learned a valuable lesson. True talent, nurtured with love, effort, and heart, could surprise anyone. And the billionaire, whose life had been built on wealth and influence, saw that real power sometimes lies not in money, but in the courage to follow one's dreams against all odds. After the performance, the hall slowly emptied, leaving behind a quiet hum of conversation and soft echoes of the piano notes. The girl sat alone for a few moments, her fingers brushing lightly over the keys, as if to remember the magic that had just occurred. Her heart was still racing, but not from fear. It was from the thrill of finally being heard. She had faced the billionaire's doubt and the whispers of the audience, and yet, she had played. She had proven something to herself more than anyone else. Life outside the academy remained a struggle. She returned to a small, modest apartment where the walls were thin, and the sounds of neighbors' arguments and footsteps filtered through. Her piano at home was old, with keys that stuck and notes that rang unevenly. Some nights, she would sit by candlelight, her tiny metronome ticking steadily, practicing pieces she couldn't always play perfectly. Each day was a battle against poverty, distraction, and exhaustion, but she refused to give up. Music was not just a dream, it was a lifeline. She started to think about the billionaire's words. They had been harsh, dismissive, and unfair, but they had ignited something inside her. Every note she had played in the academy, every small success at home, had been fueled by a quiet determination to rise above the assumptions of others. She realized that talent alone was not enough. Persistence and focus were equally important. Every practice session, no matter how difficult, was a step toward something greater. The girl began to wake up earlier each day, making time for practice before her part-time job, which helped pay for rent and groceries. She would memorize melodies in her head on the bus, tap rhythms on the table during her lunch break, and practice finger exercises late into the night. Even when her hands ached or her eyes blurred from reading music in dim light, she continued. Each day brought her closer to the dream she carried quietly in her heart. At the academy, whispers of her performance had spread quickly. Teachers discussed her skill with a mix of surprise and admiration. Some students approached her, curious and sometimes skeptical, but most were inspired. They had seen someone rise from humble beginnings to hold the attention of a powerful billionaire with nothing but talent and determination. While she appreciated the recognition, she remained focused on her growth, knowing that praise alone could not sustain her progress. The billionaire's presence lingered in her mind. She thought about his smirk, the confidence with which he had declared that she could not play. Instead of feeling anger, she felt a quiet challenge to herself, to continue proving that her music was not defined by someone else's wealth or opinion. The thought of him, sitting with folded hands and eyes wide with disbelief, reminded her that talent could indeed surprise, but only if nurtured consistently and with heart. A few days later, a teacher at the academy approached her with an idea. The school was organizing a small recital for local musicians, and he believed she should perform again. He explained that it would be an opportunity to practice performing under pressure, to gain confidence, and perhaps even to be noticed by patrons of music who could support her future. The girl listened carefully, nodding slowly. She felt nervous but also excited. Every performance was a step forward, a chance to show that her skills were real and growing. Preparation began in earnest. The girl carefully selected pieces that challenged her but also allowed her to express emotion. She practiced scales, chords, and arpeggios with renewed focus, spending hours perfecting every note. She also experimented with dynamics and tempo, trying to make her music tell a story rather than just sound correct. She understood that music was not only about precision but also about feeling and connection. Meanwhile, life's challenges continued. Bills needed to be paid, groceries purchased, and the apartment maintained. Sometimes, exhaustion threatened to overpower her motivation, and some nights she would collapse on her small bed, dreaming of pianos she could not yet afford and performances she still had to achieve. Yet, every morning she returned to practice, determined to keep moving forward. Her dreams were bigger than her fatigue. Her neighbors began to notice her dedication. Some were curious, some indifferent, but a few began to admire the persistence she displayed. The girl never spoke much about her past or her struggles. She preferred to let her music do the talking. The soft notes of her piano often floated through the apartment, reaching ears that might otherwise have remained unaware of her talent. It was in these quiet moments, with the world asleep, that she felt most connected to her dream. The girl also sought advice from teachers at the academy whenever she could. She asked questions about technique, interpretation, and performance. She studied recordings of famous pianists, analyzing how they expressed emotion through their playing. Each small lesson, each new understanding, became another brick in the foundation of her growing skill. She knew that learning was ongoing, and she welcomed every opportunity to improve. As the day of the recital approached, nerves and excitement intertwined. She imagined the audience, the piano, and the sounds she would create. She pictured the reactions of people who had doubted her before, wondering if they would be surprised again. The thought did not intimidate her. It energized her. She knew that she had worked hard, that she had prepared with care, and that her music carried her story in every note. On the night of the recital, the hall was small but filled with people. Friends, teachers, and a few patrons of music took their seats, waiting for the performances to begin. The girl stood backstage, fingers hovering over the keys, taking deep breaths to calm her racing heart. She remembered the days of practicing alone, the quiet hours spent perfecting every note, and she felt a sense of pride. This was her moment, a chance to shine once more. When it was her turn, she stepped onto the stage with quiet confidence. She could hear the soft rustle of the audience, the subtle movements of chairs, and the expectant silence. She approached the piano, her fingers brushing the keys, and the first notes filled the room. The music was delicate at first, tentative, but as she continued, it grew in strength and clarity. The audience was captivated, drawn into the story she was telling through her hands. Every note carried emotion, hope, struggle, determination, and joy. She felt a connection to every listener, imagining that each person could understand a part of her journey through the music. Teachers and students exchanged looks of admiration, and even the patrons, who had attended many performances, leaned forward, drawn in by the sincerity and skill of her playing. She was not just performing. She was communicating, sharing a piece of herself through sound. When the final note faded, the hall was silent for a brief moment, as if the audience could not believe what they had heard. Then, slowly, applause erupted, growing louder and louder. The girl smiled quietly, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced doubt, worked tirelessly, and now she had been heard again. The music had done what words could not. It had spoken the truth of her talent and dedication. After the recital, people approached her with kind words and encouragement. Some offered advice, some praised her skill, and others expressed amazement that someone from her background could play with such heart and precision. The girl listened politely, feeling gratitude but remaining focused on the work ahead. She knew that one performance, while meaningful, was just one step in a much longer journey. That night, as she returned home, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It required discipline, perseverance, and a willingness to face challenges head-on. She thought about the billionaire, imagining his reaction if he could hear her now. Perhaps he would still doubt at first, but eventually he would see what she already knew. That dedication and heart could defy expectations and change perceptions. She sat at her old piano at home, fingers brushing the uneven keys, and played softly for herself. The notes were imperfect, the keys worn, but the music was full of feeling. She realized that every struggle, every sacrifice, and every hour of practice had shaped her into a stronger, more determined musician. She had learned that success was not about impressing others. It was about growing, persevering, and sharing her gift with the world. In those quiet hours, the girl felt a sense of peace and hope. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that challenges and doubt would continue to appear. But she also knew that she had the strength to meet them, to continue practicing, learning, and performing. Her music was her voice, her proof, and her legacy in the making. And with every note, she moved closer to the future she had always dreamed of, one key at a time. Weeks passed, and the Academy was buzzing with anticipation for the upcoming major public performance. This event was different from the small recital she had attended before. It would be held in a larger hall, with an audience that included music enthusiasts, patrons, and critics from the city. The girl felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She knew this was her chance to truly prove herself, not only to the audience but perhaps to the billionaire who had doubted her in the past. Every day she practiced more rigorously than before. Her old piano at home became her sanctuary. She memorized every note, every rhythm, and worked tirelessly on expression and emotion. She also studied recordings of famous performances, analyzing the subtle ways musicians conveyed feelings through tempo, dynamics, and phrasing. Her goal was not just to play correctly, but to tell a story with her music, to make the audience feel something they couldn't forget. Her life outside practice remained a challenge. She continued to work part-time, save money, and manage daily chores. But she found moments of joy in simple things, like the sunlight hitting the piano keys or the sound of the notes reverberating through the room. These moments reminded her why she had begun this journey and why she could not give up. Her determination grew stronger with every passing day. The billionaire's name kept circulating around the academy. Students whispered about whether he would attend the performance and how he might react. The girl did not let the rumors distract her. She knew that she could not control who came to see her or what they thought. All she could control was her preparation, her dedication, and the honesty she brought to her music. On the day of the performance, the hall was filled with anticipation. The audience chatted quietly, the stage was brightly lit, and the grand piano sat gleaming under the lights. The girl arrived early, checking the instrument and making sure everything felt comfortable. She could feel her heart pounding, but she also felt a calm confidence. She had practiced, she had prepared, and she was ready to face whatever came her way. Backstage, she waited as other musicians performed. Some were confident, some nervous, but all talented. She reminded herself to focus on her own performance, not to compare herself to others. Her fingers hovered over the keys, and she imagined each note, each chord, and the story she wanted to tell. She breathed deeply, feeling the music flowing through her before she even touched the piano. When it was her turn, she walked onto the stage, the audience quieting down instantly. The lights made the hall glow, and she could see the faces of many strangers, all waiting. In the front row, she noticed a familiar figure, the billionaire. He was seated with his arms crossed, a faint smile playing on his lips, as if he were curious to see if she would rise to the occasion. She did not let his presence intimidate her. Instead, it reminded her of how far she had come since he had doubted her. She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. The first note was soft, hesitant, but purposeful. She closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. Her fingers moved with confidence, telling a story of struggle, hope, and determination. The hall was silent except for the notes she played. Each chord resonated with emotion, filling the space with a sense of connection and sincerity. The audience leaned forward, captivated. The girl felt a rush of energy as she played, her confidence growing with every measure. She was no longer the girl from the corner of the hall, nervous and unsure. She was a musician, sharing her heart with everyone who listened. The story of her life, her struggles, and her dedication flowed through her fingers and into the air. People who had doubted her could no longer ignore the truth in her music. The billionaire watched intently, his expression unreadable. He had seen many talented musicians, but there was something different about her performance. It was not just skill, it was authenticity, passion, and courage. He could not hide the flicker of surprise in his eyes as he listened to her play. The confidence he had worn like armor before seemed to waver, replaced by genuine curiosity and respect. As the piece continued, the girl's music grew bolder and more expressive. She experimented with dynamics, softening here, intensifying there, creating a flow that was both technical and emotional. The audience could feel the dedication and effort she had poured into each note. They were not just hearing a performance, they were experiencing a story, and it touched them deeply. When the final chord echoed through the hall, silence followed for a brief, suspended moment. Then the applause erupted, loud and heartfelt, filling the space with admiration and excitement. The girl opened her eyes, smiling, feeling a wave of relief and joy. She had done it. She had faced the challenge, the pressure, and the doubts, and emerged triumphant. The audience's reaction was proof that her talent and determination could overcome obstacles, no matter how daunting. People came forward to congratulate her, expressing awe at her skill and emotion. Some asked how she had learned to play with such depth, while others were inspired by her dedication. The girl listened politely, feeling grateful, but she knew her journey was far from over. This performance was another step in her growth, another opportunity to push herself further and continue improving. Backstage, she packed her sheet music carefully, reflecting on the experience. She thought about the lessons she had learned. Patience, persistence, and the importance of believing in oneself. She realized that challenges and doubts were not barriers, they were opportunities to grow stronger. Her heart felt full of hope, knowing that she had taken another important step toward her dreams. The billionaire approached her after the performance. His posture was less rigid, his expression softer than before. He did not speak of her background or past, but instead, he acknowledged her talent and the effort she had put into her performance. For the first time, he seemed to recognize the strength that came from dedication, courage, and heart. The girl nodded respectfully, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had not played for recognition, but for herself, and yet she had earned respect naturally through her music. That night, she returned home, carrying the memory of the hall, the applause, and the faces of the audience. She sat at her old piano, fingers brushing the keys, and replayed the melodies in her mind. Each note reminded her of the journey she had undertaken and the challenges she had overcome. She felt a deep sense of pride, not in comparison to others, but in her own growth and perseverance. The girl understood that the road ahead would continue to be difficult. She would face new challenges, doubts, and obstacles, but she also knew that she had the strength to meet them. Music had become more than a dream. It was a companion, a teacher, and a source of resilience. With each practice session, each performance, and each step forward, she grew stronger and more confident in her abilities. In the quiet of her apartment, as the city lights flickered outside, she played softly for herself, savoring the notes, the emotion, and the connection they created. She had learned that true success was not about proving others wrong, but about proving to oneself that persistence, passion, and dedication could overcome any doubt or limitation. Her journey was far from over, but she had taken another important step, and that gave her hope for the future, one note at a time. The day of the grand performance arrived, and the hall was unlike anything the girl had experienced before. The seats were filled with music lovers, critics, and patrons from across the city. Cameras were set up to record the event, and a sense of excitement mixed with tension floated in the air. The girl felt her nerves tingle but also a deep sense of purpose. She had prepared tirelessly, and now it was time to let her music speak for itself. Backstage, she adjusted her dress and checked the piano one last time. She could hear the soft murmurs of the audience, the sound of other musicians performing their pieces, and the gentle click of cameras. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, remembering every hour spent practicing in her small apartment, every sacrifice made, and every moment she had pushed through exhaustion and doubt. All of it had led to this moment. The girl walked onto the stage with calm determination. The bright lights made the hall glow, and she could feel the eyes of hundreds of people on her. Her gaze drifted to the front row, and there he was, the billionaire who had once smirked and doubted her abilities. He sat with a faint smile, arms folded, observing quietly. His presence no longer intimidated her. Instead, it reminded her of how far she had come and how her perseverance had brought her to this stage. She sat at the grand piano, placed her fingers on the keys, and began with a soft, deliberate note. The music started gently, like a whisper, drawing the audience in. She closed her eyes and let the notes flow naturally, allowing the emotions she had carried for years, hope, struggle, and determination, to guide her. Each chord, each melody, was deliberate and full of feeling. The audience leaned forward, captivated, as if hanging on every note. The billionaire watched closely, his expression changing with each phrase. He had seen talented musicians before, but there was something different here. It wasn't just skill. It was authenticity, passion, and the story that poured from her hands. He could see her journey reflected in every note. The nights of practice, the obstacles she had faced, the quiet moments of determination. It was impossible not to be affected by it. The girl's confidence grew as she continued playing. She moved seamlessly between soft, tender melodies and bold, dynamic passages, creating a story that resonated deeply with everyone present. The audience was silent, completely absorbed in her performance. They felt the emotions she had lived through, the struggles and triumphs she had endured. She was no longer just a student from a humble background. She was an artist commanding the stage, and her music reached every corner of the hall. Her hands moved with precision and grace, each note telling a story that words could never capture. She played with heart, and the audience felt it. Some were moved to tears, others sat in awe, and a few whispered to their neighbors about the incredible talent before them. The girl had become a conduit for her own journey, allowing the music to speak where words had failed. The billionaire leaned forward, clearly impressed. He had been quick to judge her before, but now he could not deny the skill and emotion she conveyed. He realized that true talent could not be measured by wealth or status, and that someone's background did not define their potential. Her music had surprised him, not just in skill, but in depth and expression. He felt a sense of humility, recognizing that the world often overlooked those who were underestimated. As the performance reached its climax, the girl poured every ounce of energy and emotion into the piano. The music swelled, filling the hall with a powerful resonance. The audience was completely captivated, unable to tear their eyes away. The notes were not just sounds. They were an expression of her soul, a declaration of her resilience and determination. Every challenge she had faced, every obstacle overcome, was reflected in her playing. When the final chord lingered and faded into silence, the hall held its breath for a moment. Then, suddenly, applause erupted, loud and overwhelming. The girl opened her eyes, a smile of quiet triumph spreading across her face. She had done it. She had faced doubt, pressure, and expectations, and she had triumphed. The audience's reaction was genuine and heartfelt, a testament to the impact of her music and the journey that had brought her here. People rushed to congratulate her, expressing amazement at her skill and the emotion she conveyed. Teachers, students, and patrons spoke of how deeply moved they were by her performance. Some offered opportunities, while others simply shared words of admiration. The girl accepted their praise with humility, understanding that this was just one step in her journey. Her music had reached people's hearts, and that was more important than anything else. The billionaire approached her after the performance, his expression transformed from one of skepticism to respect. He did not speak of her past or background, but instead acknowledged her talent, dedication, and the emotion she had conveyed. He had witnessed firsthand that talent, determination, and heart could defy expectations and create something extraordinary. The girl nodded politely, feeling a sense of quiet pride. She had not played for recognition, but her efforts had earned respect naturally. That night, as she returned to her small apartment, she reflected on the experience. She sat at her old piano, fingers brushing the keys softly, and replayed the melodies in her mind. Each note reminded her of the journey she had undertaken, the struggles, sacrifices, and triumphs that had led her to this moment. She felt a sense of peace and hope, knowing that her dedication had brought her closer to her dreams. The girl understood that challenges would continue to appear in her life, that doubts and obstacles were inevitable. But she also knew that she had the strength to overcome them. Music had become her voice, her teacher, and her companion. With each practice session and each performance, she grew stronger, more confident, and more determined. She had learned that success was not about proving others wrong, but about proving to oneself that perseverance and passion could lead to extraordinary results. In the quiet of her apartment, she played softly for herself, savoring the notes, the emotion, and the connection they created. She realized that every moment of struggle, every hour of practice, and every small victory had shaped her into the musician she had become. She had discovered that talent was only part of the journey. Courage, dedication, and heart were equally important. The girl knew that her story was far from over. She would continue to face challenges, but she also knew that she had the tools and strength to meet them. Music had given her a voice, a way to express herself, and a path to reach her dreams. And with every note she played, she moved closer to the future she had always imagined, confident that her dedication and passion would carry her through whatever lay ahead. The days after the grand performance were filled with a whirlwind of attention. People from the music world contacted the Academy, praising the young girl's talent and dedication. She received letters and invitations to perform at different venues, and some even offered scholarships to help her continue her studies. Despite all this, she remained grounded, understanding that every opportunity was a chance to grow, not just a reward. Her focus stayed on her music, on improving every day, and on continuing the journey she had started so long ago in her small apartment. The billionaire, who had witnessed her performance, became a topic of conversation among the Academy staff. Some wondered if he would make any further comments, while others speculated about his interest in supporting her future. To her surprise, he requested a private meeting. The girl felt a mix of curiosity and caution as she prepared to meet him. She did not know what to expect, but she knew that her confidence and dedication had brought her this far. When she arrived at the meeting, the billionaire greeted her with a warm, genuine smile. Gone was the smirk that had once undermined her, replaced by respect and admiration. He acknowledged her talent, her discipline, and the passion that shone through in every note she had played. For the first time, he seemed to understand that true skill came not just from training or wealth but from heart, determination, and perseverance. He spoke of the importance of nurturing talent and offered support in ways she had never imagined. It wasn't just financial assistance. He offered mentorship, connections in the music world, and guidance to help her reach her full potential. The girl listened carefully, grateful but measured. She knew that opportunities were valuable, but it was her dedication and effort that had brought her here. This meeting felt like recognition, not just of her talent, but of her relentless pursuit of her dreams. With new support and encouragement, the girl continued to practice with renewed vigor. Each day, she challenged herself to play more complex pieces, to express deeper emotions, and to explore new techniques. She knew that her journey would be long, with highs and lows, but she embraced the challenges. Music had become a part of her very being, a language that allowed her to communicate what words could not. Every note she played was a reflection of her life, her struggles, and her dreams. She also became a source of inspiration for others. Students at the Academy looked up to her. Teachers praised her dedication, and even strangers who heard about her story admired her perseverance. She shared her experiences with humility, encouraging others to believe in themselves, no matter their circumstances. Her story became a reminder that talent, when combined with hard work and courage, could defy expectations and create something extraordinary. Over time, she performed at more venues, each audience offering a new challenge and new opportunity to connect through music. Some performances were small and intimate, while others were large and prestigious. Each time, she played with sincerity and passion, remembering the journey that had brought her to this point. She remained focused on the essence of music, the ability to express, connect, and inspire. The billionaire continued to watch her progress from a distance, occasionally attending performances and providing guidance when appropriate. His initial skepticism had transformed into respect and support. He often shared her story with others, highlighting how talent and determination could emerge from unexpected places. The girl did not let the praise distract her. She remained humble and committed to her growth, understanding that the journey mattered more than recognition. Her life outside music continued, but it was now intertwined with her art in a way that felt natural and fulfilling. She balanced her studies, practice, and personal life with care, never losing sight of the passion that had driven her from the beginning. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new moments of joy. Music had become her compass, guiding her through both the mundane and the extraordinary. As the years passed, her reputation as a talented pianist grew. She performed in front of larger audiences, collaborated with other musicians, and explored new styles and compositions. Yet, she never forgot the journey that had started with a simple desire to play the piano, the hours of practice in a small apartment, and the doubt she had faced from the billionaire and others. These memories grounded her, reminding her of the value of persistence and resilience. Eventually, she became a mentor herself, helping young musicians who, like her, faced challenges and limitations. She shared not just techniques, but the importance of patience, dedication, and belief in oneself. Her story became a beacon of hope, showing that obstacles could be overcome and that talent could flourish regardless of circumstances. She understood that her journey was not just about personal success, but about inspiring and guiding others along their paths. The billionaire remained an influential figure in her life, not as a source of pressure, but as someone who had come to appreciate the depth of her talent. He respected her independence, admired her perseverance, and occasionally offered advice or support when needed. Their relationship evolved into one of mutual respect, a reminder that initial judgments could be wrong, and that true talent often surprises even the most confident observers. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, the girl sat quietly in her apartment, reflecting on her journey. She thought about the moments of doubt, the late nights of practice, the small victories, and the challenges overcome. She realized that every step had shaped her, not just as a musician, but as a person. Her music had become a reflection of her spirit, a voice that could inspire, comfort, and connect. She understood that life would continue to present obstacles, doubts, and moments of uncertainty. But she also knew that the strength she had developed, the resilience, dedication, and passion, would carry her forward. Music had taught her that growth came not just from talent, but from effort, persistence, and the courage to face challenges head-on. The girl looked at her piano, the worn keys a reminder of where she had started, and smiled. She had come a long way from the girl who had been told she couldn't play. She had faced doubt, worked tirelessly, and shared her music with the world. Her journey was ongoing, but she was ready for whatever came next. She knew that with heart, determination, and the courage to continue, anything was possible. And so, she continued to play, each note a testament to her journey, each performance a reminder of the power of perseverance. She had turned doubt into motivation, challenges into opportunity, and dreams into reality. The world had been surprised by her talent, but she knew the real triumph was within herself. Music had given her a voice, a purpose, and a path forward. And with every note, she embraced the future, confident that her dedication and passion would continue to guide her, one key at a time.